So it's a great pleasure to see so many of you here this evening. Sejam todos e todas muito bem-vindos. Welcome to a great event, another great event featuring Brazil and one of the most distinguished leaders in, I would say, not only today, but in Brazilian history, who is with us tonight. So a special welcome to President Fernando Henrique Cardoso. Seja muito bem-vindo, Senhor Presidente. My role is simply to get things started here tonight for a discussion of probably the most important, one of the most important, if not the most important topic in Brazil today, which is the 2018 elections and their likely aftermath with President Cardoso. I'm Tom Treba, for those of you who don't know me. I'm the director of the Colombia Global Center in Rio. Yes, Colombia has a branch, has an operation in Rio, to which you are all warmly invited. And it gives us an excellent way, position to learn about this fascinating country. Putting together one of these events, often with relatively short notice during a busy university calendar, it really does require a village. We're especially grateful for the help in putting on the event tonight to the Office of the President of the University, to Provost John Coatsworth and his staff, especially to the Institute of Latin American Studies and the Lemann Center for Brazilian Studies within the Institute, and their director, Gustavo Azinho, who's with us tonight. So on behalf of all of us as well at the Colombia Global Center in Rio, it is a pleasure to support this visit by President Cardoso. At this point, I would like to turn matters over to our host and moderator for the evening, is Professor Albert Fischlo of SIPA. Just a word about Al is certainly in order. His bio is long and illustrious. Suffice it to say that he is presently Professor Emeritus at SIPA. That's his official title. Unofficially, he is a great and dear friend of Brazil, and he's one of the leading Brazilianists, not only on this campus, but in the world today. So it's a pleasure to have Al with us to perform the hosting and moderation duties. Colombia maintains very close ties with Brazil, and much of this relationship has been built upon the academic and managerial talents of Al Fischlo. So at this point, Al, I'll welcome you to the podium, and you in turn will present to us your friend and our honored guest, President Fernando Henrique Cardoso. Welcome, Al.
It's an extraordinary pleasure to be able to introduce Fernando Henrique Cardoso once more, because he's been to Colombia a number of times. We are very fortunate to have had his presence and his wit, as well as his deep knowledge. There are few people in the world who start out as world-class sociologists, subsequently acquire a good bit of political science, and if I do say even economics, because he became Minister of Finance as well. And he is the person who managed to put the Real Plan into effect. And so we are now at a point of celebrating the more than 15 years since it had been established. No, it's more than that. It has to be closer to 20, excuse me. And the thing about it that is virtually unique is that Brazil has the same currency today. That may seem to be a small matter, but it actually turns out to be rather exceptional that you don't go to Brazil and wind up tearing off 3,0,0,0,0 and walking in with a pile of currency. Not quite as bad as Venezuela, fortunately. The thing that is impressive, most impressive about Fernando Henrique and is the fact that he started in 1969 SEBRAP, which I had the pleasure of actually speaking at when I was down in Brazil, and where he has seen the development now of almost 50 years of success in putting together a group which is 150 researchers, and it is something that was very important. But he had an itch for politics. He had a desire, I think, to rationalize the world around him that was showing fissures of one kind and another. He managed to write a very important book called, I'm just trying to look at it and find out here what it is. My goodness gracious. And I was the one who read it and approved it for the University of California. I think it was as you can see, I am getting older and he is getting younger. But anyway, to make a long story a short one, he has managed to become Minister of International Affairs of Brazil, and that was at an event which was held at the University of California at Berkeley, which I hosted at that time, just before he returned to Brazil. The final observation that I will make is he became the head of a new political party in Brazil that has been a prominent contender within the political environment of Brazil. And tonight, we are very fortunate in that he is going to talk not about the past, but about the future. So it is with great pleasure that we welcome Fernando Henrique Cardoso.
Yeah, well, good evening. Thank you very much for coming. I was not prepared to give a talk, a conference. In my mind, I would have to have some conversation with Brazilian students around the table. So I will try to do the same thing with you, more openly. And I would prefer to, since Albert said that he's getting old, I'm older around, so I will sit down here because it's more practical. And let's try to see what can I say about what's going on in Brazil. But before, let me make some considerations. First of all, thank you very much all for what you said, and let me correct you a little bit. Well, you refer to the fact that I was there at Berkeley, teaching there. And to my surprise, I went back to Brazil, not to be Minister of Foreign Affairs, but was in a different situation. I entered into political life by accident. I wrote a book about that, President by Accident. Well, but not just president. I was in Berkeley, teaching there, and I received a call phone by the governor of São Paulo, informing me that he decided to present himself, the senator from São Paulo, Montoro. He informed me that he decided to run for the governorship of São Paulo. At the time, we were fighting against authoritarian regime in Brazil. This was yet in the early 80s, and before the democratization. And during the electoral campaign for the Senate, I allowed to be number 2 with Montoro, competing with him, but just to justify my participation to enlarge the number of votes who the oppositional party, named MDB, Brazilian Democratic Party, could get it. So I had no idea that, because he was elected, he got, I guess, 4 million votes. I got 1 point something million votes, because the idea was to add, and together we won against the opposition, which I'm a member very close to the military regime. I had no idea that as number 2, I would success the number 1 if the number 1 decides, well, to leave the Senate, because I had one number 2, and he had another one, but by the legislation at the time, the alternate senator would replace the first one. So I was in Berkeley, and I received the news that, well, it's possible. So at the end of my period of class there, the head of the department, a sociology expert in religions, called me to have a tea, and said to me, well, if you want, you can stay for longer here, because another professor, a German one, Habermas, very famous one, decided to leave. And it would be possible for me to stay for longer as full professor at Berkeley. I replied, well, okay, I accept, but I would like to have also a seat in Capitol Hill, because if I go back to Brazil, I became senator. And in fact, that's what occurred. Montoro was elected governor, and then I replaced him as senator. So that was by accident. But this was a very short story, just to correct a little bit what you said, and to say thank you very much for what you said about SEBRAP and other things we did. And let's try to talk about the more contemporaneous problems. Well, I have been in the last maybe year involved in several discussions about democracy in general. And as you know, there is a widespread crisis in democratic institutions. It's not only in Brazil or in Argentina, etc. And I was in Paris with my old teacher, Professor Touraine, who is still alive. He's 91 years old. This is making me happy because I'm 86, and he's 91, and he's okay. And we are discussing with a group of people about democracy. And there is another member of this group, he's a French sociologist, Pascal Perrinot, who has a very simple concept, a notion, which seems to be applicable to different situations. He used to say, well, we are looking after globalization. Globalization is the main issue across the globe, the integration of markets, transformation of social life, so on and so forth, because of globalization. The gap between rich and poor is in a different way, including there are pools in the central countries and pools in the periphery, rich people in the periphery, a kind of archipelago which join people from different parts of the world, independent from national borders, so on and so forth. But he said, well, we have to consider that some people are very happy with globalization. The word he uses in French, il y en a une globalisation heureuse. That is to say, there is a globalization which is good for people. Mais il y en a un autre qui est malheureuse. But there are other forms of globalization which are damaging to people. So this is, for him, is the key question to be dealt if you want to analyze what is going on across the globe. And it's true. We have several people surprised when you look what happened in your country. I'm not going to enter into details in your country because not my area of analysis and it's not polite to speak about. But anyhow, when you look data, electoral data, you see the Rust Belt supported dramatically President Trump. Meanwhile, in New York, it was the opposite to this. Well, if you look what happened in UK with the Brexit, that is to say, the decision to leave European Union, the same. People in London voted more favorable to stay with Europe. Meanwhile, in other parts, in rural areas, old people and other kinds of categories voted against because they are not happy with what is occurring. The same applies to France. In the case of Marie Le Pen, who is a extreme rightist candidate, and she was supported by former communist Labour members, party members of the communists prefer to vote for her because of nationalism or because of I don't know what. Well, and now we have a different situation with Macron, the French leader, who said, no, I suppose that what is good for France is to be become more integrated into the economic union, and has hope in that sense. So it's not necessarily people who are pessimists will win elections, but anyhow, there is a kind of separation between those which are being benefited by the current movement of integration of the economies and those who are losing ground because of globalization. Of course, that's not the only one situation. But anyhow, if you look a little bit back, our institutions, our democratic institutions, our democratic institutions, I mean the Western democracies, start to be something important when they become institutionalized and the vote has been generalized. It has occurred from the 19th century on. After the American Revolution, the French Revolution, and during the 19th century, in fact, we have a new form of political action, the parties. But of course, we have parties in other sense, all times, families, groups of people, but not parties in the modern sense. In the modern sense, the parties have been created when people adhere to an organization which is out of the power structure and try to compete to be participant within the power structure. And then the parties which became important in the 19th century are leftist parties, socialist party, communist party, because they put together people out of the system into the political practices until a point that even Engels, in 1890, was doubting what is better, to have a revolution or an election. Could be an election because the Social Democratic Party won practically in most of Europe. So it could be possible to to try an electoral road toward power. Well, these were the new parties, organizations organized outside of the government to compete in order to have access to power. And those organizations normally had ideas which intend to represent social interests based on social structures capable to produce some forms of cohesion, classes. So our idea, I mean, sociologically speaking, when we speak, no more, but when I was a student, it was quite clear. You have the right, the center, the left, and some differentiations corresponding to structural differentiations. And within societies, we had cohesion, social cohesion. Well, what's happening nowadays is not just because some people hate globalization, meanwhile others adore globalization. It's more than that. Societies are being so profoundly transformed by modern technologies, which also are responsible for, or at least given space for globalization, that the fragmentation in society is enormous. We have no more the stable kind of social structure supporting parties, institutions, and ideologies corresponding each one. So this is a more profound crisis than what seems to appear, and more generalized crisis. We speak about crisis all around the Western Hemisphere, not in other parts of the world. That's not the case of China. The last Communist Party Congress in China was the opposite to this. The idea is very clear. We have one party, the party knows what is good for people, and we have one leader, and the leader has to control moral authority, and they are delivering what people want. Housing, sewage, transportation, and jobs, and so on and so forth. So there's another kind of justification for what is occurring there. Not just there. If you go to Russia, it's not necessary to speak about parties. It's a different formation. So the crisis which, to which we are referring now are crises in Western countries, because the Western countries were capable to organize institutions based on parties, based on freedom and competition, so on and so forth. All around we have problems with that system. I'm not defending the opposite. I'm not saying that what's good is to seize with our values. What I'm insisting is that we have more than just globalization and more than just corruption. We'll be back to the issue. But it's much more than that, more profound than that. We have a profound transformation in the structure of societies, and it's very simple. Social mobility, new occupations, geographical mobility, migration, so on and so forth. All this contributes to a kind of, to jeopardize the old system. The old system are very consolidated institutions, including parties. Well, this is the panorama in which we are. I repeat, we are, not just Brazilians. All we are. In the case of Latin America, and in our case, it's still more complicated. That is to say, we have more doubts about how we are working the political system in our countries. Why? By different reasons. First of all, we came from the Iberian tradition. So corporatism is very important to understand what's going on in this kind of society, you know, and this is not new. There's lots of studies about corporativism and the consequence of that, so on and so forth. And since the beginning in our countries, the state has been an important player, much more important than individuals. You came from a different, I mean, you Americans, came from a different tradition. If you know, not just the Federalist Papers, but Tocqueville, all them, they say, wow, what is important to have some sense of equality and the spirit of freedom, of liberty. And the basis for that is community and religion and individuals. Well, this never have been the sensibility of the Latin American countries or the Iberian countries. The idea was the opposite to this. What is important is the collective, not the individual, the collective, the state. And if possible, we organize corporations, collective again, to compete within the state or to link with the state, to press in the name of the nation or the name of the people, I don't know what, for our interests or our organized interests. So we came from a different background, and step by step, we modify our political processes in our countries, meanwhile, in order to integrate mass of people, some well placed within this system of power have the sensibility and the interest to address to those who are out, and this has been called populism, when we speak in the name of the working class, the Peronists, the Vargas, so on and so forth. But the idea of the populists in Latin America, at least, was always progressive. That is to say, let's integrate these people because we have possibility to go ahead with them. And that we are inclusive, not exclusive. We intend to protect our nation, but our nation is strong enough to open possibilities for those who are including now. And, well, normally there was a leader, a caudillo, something like that, who expressed those ideas, more than one party. The introduction of democracy was through these different instruments. Democracy in the sense, social democracy. Let's include, let's put all them together. This is the opposite, to which today is labeled as populism in Europe or here, because it's exclusive. Let's put the migrants outside. Let's not to allow foreigners to come. Let's to defend the past, our tradition. Our populism was looking ahead. The current populism in Europe is looking back. Let's try, or even here, let's put America first again, you see? Well, so all around we have similarities, but coming from different perspectives. The content of our political negotiation, the ideology and discussion is quite different in different parts of the globe. Okay. Well, in the case of Brazil, to be a little bit more specific, I cannot be too much specific, of course. A little bit more. What happened in the last, let's put 30 years, after the new constitution? The new constitution was proclaimed, I don't know, approved in 1988. I was there, not just me, there are others among you who have participated also in the constitutional debate. What was our idea then? If we have, I don't know if we had ideas, but our sensibility, to be more correct. Well, let's avoid authoritarian regime forever. Then we are in 88, so before the falling of the Berlin Wall. So let's keep our tradition in the sense that the state has a very important say in economy and in society. And let's protect some corporations. I was very active in discussing the union system in Brazil, and maybe to the surprise of some of you. At the time, I had the same view sustained by Lula and the Working Class Party, and the view was very clear. We have to break the old system created by Vargas, because Vargas was inspired by the fascism, by Mussolini's idea, and the integration of the new unions was very close to the state. The state controlled both sides, the entrepreneurs and the workers. Well, we have been defeated. I mean, people with Lula and my people, we have been defeated in the constitutional vote because a kind of alliance. I don't go into specificities too, because they are friends of mine. Or some people from the left made an alliance with the big leaders of the industrial of business in Brazil. And the system has been kept as it was. So the corporations were continued to be very active and permeated the state apparatus from that point up to recently. See? So, but the idea was, let's open, let's democratize. Well, we had a tremendous debate to know what kind of regime would be a parliamentary one or a presidentialist one. Well, the majority, I was head of one important commission. I was vice president, but in practice I was president because the president was too old, maybe the age I have now. So these kind of people are terrible. They have to put aside. Well, and then the more important committee inside the Constitutional Congress decided to transform the Constitution toward a more parliamentary regime. At the last minute, because of reaction by the President and others, this has been put apart, but the Constitution was conceived as if we were in a parliamentary rule. Well, then we had something. We became presidentialists. We said, okay, and on top of that, the president has to be elected by majority vote, 50% plus one. If he is not able to get 50% plus one on the first round, we have, as on used to say in France, a ballotage. So that is to say, let's have another election to see who will be able to got 50% plus one. So our presidential regime is very well rooted in the electorate, within the electorate, because the president has been supported by majority. But what we did with the parties, the opposite. We put very, very clearly that there cannot be any objection to the formation of parties. Every time the Congress tried to put limits, and tried several times, the Supreme Court says, no, it's impossible. So the consequences are obvious. At the beginning, we had maybe 4, 5, 6 parties. Today, we have 80 parties inside the parliament, in the House of Representatives, plus a queue composed by something like 30 parties, additional parties. Well, what the president can, how he can react, because the demands are coming from the society, and people believe that the president is a powerful guy. In fact, in practice, he has an enormous amount of power, but it's a democracy. So this power has limits. One is the Congress, the other one is the judicial system. And in Brazil, democracy is being more and more supported by our day-by-day life. So how can we pass one agenda? To imagine that a Congress composed by 20 parties will be capable to propose any agenda is a little bit crazy. I'll give you numbers. I don't know if the numbers are exact, but approximately. Today, the party number 1 has maybe 58 members in the House. Number 2, 56, 55. Number 3, 53, 54. And they are one against the other. So how is it possible to unify, to form a majority? Well, that was always a key question. When I was still in power, in office, at least I had the possibility to put together 3 or 4 parties until it would be enough to consolidate the position of the executive branch, that is to say, to approve bills in Congress. Before I became president, I had a tremendous discussion with my people from my party. My party was a small party, named Social Democratic Party, PSDB, and was a branch of the old MDB or PMDB, which is still alive in Brazil. Well, and it was necessary to have a decision. The polls were very clear. Since I was finance minister from the former president, President Franco, and since the program you referred to, Real Plan, was a success, we have been able to make the inflation decrease from, I don't know, when I start being finance minister, I don't know how to pronounce in English or here. The point is that I had maybe, as an average, every month, 25%, more than 20% per month. So escalating 1,000 because it's cumulative, so it's enormous. So the inflation came down because of the real plan. That's the reason why I became president. There is no other reason. It would be impossible. Most of my time I was a university teacher, and I had a very small political experience. I was appointed to be the Minister of Finance by a president who was the result of another impeachment, and very, very weak in political terms. But we organized to put together some very talented people and have been successful. Okay. So I said, well, the service were clear. I will be capable to win elections. No doubt about it. Against my candidatures was Lula. But Lula at the time made a tremendous mistake. Then he corrected. The mistake was to be very isolated and to be threatening that he would try to change everything, so on and so forth. Okay, so I won. And I knew that he would be probably the new president. But I had a discussion with my colleagues. I said, well, okay, it's possible for me to become president, but not possible for me to govern, because the party probably will be capable to have maybe 15% of the seats. So we have to make alliances. Difficult decision. Always is difficult to take the decision to be in alliance with others, because if they are the same, not necessarily an alliance. We make alliance with people different from us. So to what extent? With whom? We made with the PTB, which is the working class Labour Party, and the Liberal Front. Liberal Front was a head Dutch, because it was a Liberal Front, and liberal in Brazil is a bad notion. Anyhow, the decision was that. And because of that, I had an enormous majority in Congress, because putting together these parties, and then even before I became president, I asked the president of the PMDB, from where I came. I was leader in Senate of the PMDB, so I had contact with them. I called the president of the party, who died very recently, was a senator from Santa Catarina. I said, well, I need you with me. So we made a kind of exchange of letters, designing some consideration about the future of Brazil. So I had an enormous alliance who gave me the possibility to govern for two terms. I was elected and re-elected. Well, when Lula came, this was his third attempt, I guess, fourth attempt to become president. Lula learned. And he had also a coalition. But Lula took a decision at one point in time against one of his party members, the important one, who would prefer to have an alliance with the PMDB. The decision was not to be in alliance with the PMDB, which was a big party, but to have an alliance with an enormous spectrum of small parties. I'm not going into details, but the end consequence of that decision was the formation of what in Brazilian is called mensalão. That is to say, the instrument to get support from these small parties was much more in terms of exchange, and very often the exchange was in money, and produced a scandal, the first big scandal. Because of that, because of the necessity from the point of view of government to create a majority. And if the majority is not created beforehand, during the electoral campaign, and based on some values, of course the day-by-day life will impose you other kind of alliances. Well, then the members of the representative house discovered that it's a very simple. to organize a party. It's enough to have 2, 3, 10 Congress members and ask for a party. And the parties are like unions in Brazil. That is to say, they have access to money, public money. A small party has nothing, $10 million every year. Well, for a party controlled by one person, it's not that bad. A good party has 10 million per month. Nobody knows about that. But these are the realities behind the scene, you see? So the proliferation of parties was based on the idea, not based on the idea, but on the consequence of the fact that if you have a party, you can bargain with the power, not just access to money, public money, or officially, it's not corruption, it is by law. But more than that, you have to ask the president or the government, I need a ministry. I need to control a ministry. If not, well, at least a directory of the Banco do Brasil or Petrobras, someone like that, someone like that. So it was a kind of transformation of the beginning of the system created by us in the Constitution. The system was labeled as coalition presidentialism. Now it's no more coalition, it's co-optation presidentialism. Coalition means you have an arrangement to be together in the name of some ideas, maybe vague. And not just that. If you belong to the coalition, you have access to power. But more recently, the possibility to become member of government, part of to take in your hand part of government, was based on the fact that you have the number of votes to deliver. And it is like today what it works in Brazil. If you're reading newspapers in the last days, you see the president discussing about what to do with some sectors of the Congress, because they are demanding some maybe concrete things, but very often not on a moral basis or an ideological basis, on a concrete basis. That is the system, how it works now in Brazil. Not just in Brazil, I'm just describing one specific situation. So I'm not saying that the point is that you have been controlled by corrupt people. It's the opposite. The system engaged people into a system and in a way of political life that necessarily implies some forms of some kind of corruption. And this has been discovered more recently because the scandals were so high. And after the Mensalão, the Petrolão, which is the same system, but now applied in a different way, he applied directly with a state company. And the money coming from the state company through contracts between business people and the Petrobras, corrupting people inside Petrobras, but plus people lenient with corruption in business. And the money went to parties, and accidentally, not just parties, but the pocket of people from different parties. Well, this has been put on the table. And why? Because the same society which fragmented the old society is based on an enormous, as you know, system of communications. You have access to communication very easily. Everyone has a computer in his pocket, even if we don't know we use quite well, like me. But you know, I have here, and I can hear what's going on. Everyone knows. Every Brazilian has a multitude of people have information about what's going on. And also, we have simultaneously an enormous modernization of the Brazilian society. It's not just superficial, not superficial, don't say, maybe it's not correct to say superficial, the aspects of corruption. It exists. But behind is this also a connected society. The same instrument who turn possible globalization, it destroyed the old system, so on and so forth, is working there. And give access to people in terms of information, and everyone knows what's going on. And also, the bureaucracy is becoming better. Who could imagine the federal police to be independent from government? Even to me, it's shocking to see what's that. But it's true. Who could imagine, of course, the attorneys, yes, attorneys have been, since the Constitution, we had an enormous debate, you remember, about the constitutional questions on the attorney system. One of the most influential leaders at the time was himself, an attorney from one state of the south of Brazil. And the point is that we gave freedom and mandate, or more than mandate, we consolidate the power of the attorneys independently from government. And they start by working and by asking, well, this is a mistake, that's a crime, so on and so forth. And also the judicial system evolved. Lots of them have new mentality. They went to different universities abroad, even in Brazil. They know how to manage the modern instruments of knowledge. They have contacts with those who have in the banking system. They have access to the banking system. The old system, even the famous ones all around the world, are forced to give information. So the attorneys have the information, and the attorneys use the press to communicate what they have, what they know. We can debate, is it correct, is it not, I don't know. But the point is they have a political idea that is necessary for them to protect what they want to do, that is to say, to implement the law. It's necessary to inform public opinion. From time they make mistakes, they accuse people without having how to prove. It's just a mistake, and terrible, because it destroys people. But anyhow, on average, they are moving ahead. And the society is becoming more informed about the intricacies of the power system and look after, as a whole, the political system as something immoral. And most of the political people as well. True or not true, it depends. But in general, the perception is that. Most of those who are now being criticized, they got money because of electoral campaigns, because the amount of money necessary to go ahead in an electoral campaign in Brazil is enormous. And also, to some extent, the political leaders or people, they were a kind of bridge between the business and those who are in charge of the marketing, the political marketing. We are very expensive. Anyhow, altogether, this has been undercover. It's on the table. And the society is looking after that. What's that? Who is capable to overcome that? There are no one. Maybe some cynical approach to the political situation, so on and so forth. That is the situation in which we are. And by the first time, maybe ever, we have powerful people in jail. I used to say it, to repeat. I don't like to see people that I know in jail. But what can we do? If the authorities say, well, look, this is a crime. It is a crime. It's terrible. And to be in jail in Brazil, my God, it's not good, you see? But anyhow, that's the situation. And by the first time, people have this contradictory sentiment. The political system is not working well. On the other hand, well, it's true that the justice is being put in place. This is also a danger because there is a kind of cynicism and the discredit of the political elite, the political parties, is generating a kind of maybe someone who can save the nation again. Well, but anyhow, not to produce unrest. If we are living in Brazil, and you know about, some of you know by heart the names of the justices, 11 justices. They are fighting each other too. And in our case, you know, the discussion within the Supreme Court is, well, transmitted by TV. You can see them and the arguments, and it is normal. Everyone has different perceptions, and this becomes public. But anyhow, we know the name of the justices. And I doubt, even considering you, the name of the generals 4-star generals. Who knows? It's a complete transformation. In a similar situation of instability 30 years ago, everyone will be capable to know, to nominate who will be the next general. In all days, no more like that. There is no, maybe the more informed people maybe know the number of 2 or 3 generals, but in normal days, they are not on the table. I'm not saying that in the day of tomorrow, no, who knows? It depends on different circumstances. But anyhow, this is not the situation now. And the situation now is that you are seeing the justice working, better or good, they are working, trying to work. Every day, if you look, if you go to the TV to see watch TV, you see there 5 people have been arrested nowhere, 11 people, lots of people. It is really terrible to see what's going on. But it had the negative, also the positive sense. Well, coming elections, I cannot say because I'm out of the system. I have a very honorary position in my party. I'm a president, honor president. That's nothing, you see? Nothing. Now I'm honorary several things. Maybe mainly PhD honorary, okay. But honorary president of the party. I have no really contact with day-by-day life in political Brazil. What is new, maybe, in the present circumstances and in the coming future? Well, first of all, you have to take into account that political figures remain for a long time, as far as one person is a national name, it's difficult to destroy this name, in spite of all questions. Remember Perón, or Vargas. Vargas was good and bad in different moments of life, depends on consideration, but he stayed for a long time. The same applies to several, I don't want to name people, several leaders in Brazil. They have possibly cues. They can be active in political life, and in spite of all, and in spite of being considered for some as, I don't know, thieves or corrupt, condemned, well, people have a different sense of this kind of realities, because there are also concrete needs, and some of these important leaders have been able to modify life conditions for several sectors of society. And this remains important as a factor to motivate vote. That's not a moral judgment. It's an objective judgment. And this is not new. What's new is the presence of some forces coming from the extreme right. In Brazil, normally people used to say, I don't know, Peter cannot give a name, but anyhow, there is a very well-known Brazilian who once was from the right camp, and he was asked for the press, and he said, no, I'm social democrat. It became fashionable to say, I'm social democrat. You see? Everyone says, no, I have social sensibility. Of course. Now, it's different. But the first time, for a long time, because Vargas had social sensibility too, even when he was a dictator, now there is some people speaking in the name of order. We have to put thieves in jail if we cannot kill them, like that. Well, this is new. The sense that there are some people, there are others which are now saying, well, it's okay to be motivated by your interests, your personal interests, individualist interests. That's not bad. This is quite new in Brazil. In Brazil, even those who are really motivated by individual motives try to disguise and to speak on the name of a nation, of the workers, middle class, something like that. Now, nowadays, we have a kind of new forms of political affirmation. And what is interesting to note is that they have support. Not just they are speaking in that sense, but if you look at the surveys, they have been approved, supported by sectors of Brazilian society. And there is in between, in the middle, a tremendous confusion, tremendous difficulty. The same fragmentation referred to within the Congress is now appearing with respect to candidates in Brazil. So it's a risky situation because you cannot, in the sense that you cannot predict. But politics is normally not predictable. In our case, it may be a little bit more high, the sense of lack of predictability in Brazil. It's difficult to predict. And this is producing a kind of uncertainty and discredit. I prefer not to participate. I prefer not to go. In 2013, people went on the streets to protest against President Rousseff. Massive demonstration. From that time on, zero. There are no demonstrations. From both sides, or I don't know if there are only two sides, but anyhow, no people on the streets, because people don't believe anymore. It's a bad moment in that sense. Of course, I think that, it's not a hopeless situation, because what I said is also linked to the economic situation. We are passing through a tremendous recession, the biggest ever. Brazil, if you look data, as far as data are recorded, you will see that we never had more than 1 year in recession. 2 years is a lot. 3 years, never. So the sense that, we don't believe anymore in our country is terrible. It exists. And the unemployment went up to 14%. When I was in office, the clamor was terrible, because at one point in time, we reached 7%. Now we have the double. It's enormous amount of, now it's decreasing. Okay. Those who understand, or believe that they understand, like my case, what's going on in the economy, we look data and say, okay, it's not that bad. There are very hopeful new data about the prospects with respect to the GDP growing. This year maybe 0.6, 0.7, but last year was -2, minus I don't know what. The anterior year, minus I don't know what. So comparatively, it's a little bit better. And unemployment, the date was 12 point something, but it was 14. Interest rates, went down, wonderful, 7.5 per year. In real terms, the inflation could be 4. It's not bad for a country. So this probably will have consequences in the sense that, what do you do? Those who have money cannot leave the money or buy only public papers. They have to invest money. If they want to protect their wealth, they have to invest money. So foreigners look after what's going on there. It's very cheap. Let's go. On the other hand, we are exporting. China is going up still. So commodity price is not bad as an average in last year and this year. So we are not importing because the situation is bad. So the excess, the surplus between export and import is very, very important. We have in the central bank $380 billion. This is a lot of money, maybe more than we need in terms of equilibrium looking ahead. But anyhow, it's positive. But for those who are looking for jobs, these are very abstract considerations. They don't have the job yet. And they look, the cost of life is still so difficult. I believe it will be difficult that during the next election, that is to say, in less than 1 year more, people will have the sense that the situation improved. It's difficult for normal people, common people, to have the sense that we are improving. And they will look, as they are looking, after what the government says, they say, this is not true. This is not true. It is true. The government is moving ahead in the different parts of the Brazilian economy. And the moral question has become something very important, not just for middle class. Because the sense that everything is involved in corruption produces a kind of exasperation. We don't want any more. So I cannot predict, but probably in the coming elections, this will be in the middle of the discussion, in the middle of the debate, as well as some people will say, "Wow, but we are better off, maybe," but I don't believe, because I am not better off. It will depend on circumstances. And when I returning to what I said before, in this kind of situation, like here or in Europe, the message is very important. Why? Because the social bases are fragmented. The experience, the recent experience, is not a positive experience. There is a kind of discredit. So those who will be capable to say something sensible to people, and to be considered as a person, a truthful person, a person able to say the truth, has chances. This is good and dangerous, because we never know who will be the guy capable to get the enthusiasm of the masses again. So that is our situation. And the parties, please don't replicate that. Have no more power, no more force. They are no more the basis for people's behavior. Of course, parties are important, and have no alternatives. But people just don't pay attention. What every day we are interested in. If you probably there are some journalists here. What they will ask me, very important for them, maybe for me, not for people. Not for people, because they will ask about the small discussions inside the political elite, political class, and the people don't care about. They say, "Well, you are all the same. We need something different," and this is good and bad. The bad is again, a populist leader can again appear. I'm not saying, hopefully, no one or among those who are considered as possible candidates have this capacity to enthusiasm people. The only one has lost enormous credibility. So maybe we never say no about this kind of personality. So what to do? First of all, I think that we have to review our own ideas about what's good, what's possible, what people want, how can I frame my proposals, and be more clear in speaking, more open, more decent, because it's senseless to disguise. Someone said that Mussolini is a bad author to cite, anyhow. He used to say, it's not difficult to govern Italy. It's unnecessary. Well, I would say, in our case, it's unnecessary to disguise. People know. It's better to say the things as you look at the show, the things. Maybe it's not true, I don't know, but what I think, what is my feeling, if someone will be capable to, through TV, through social media, because social media is very influential, to be consistent and capable to propose a direction to the nation, okay. You know, and I really will finish here, I'm speaking about the direction of the nation. I used to say when I was in government, rumo, the direction. We have to have a rumo, one orientation. Well, the world is also like that. We have China, as I start by speaking, going up. We have America, more interested in inner discussions. We have Europe, more or less disintegrated. You have the Arabic world, Islamic world. We don't know exactly what's that, what they want. It's a world in transformation. Oh, every time world is in transformation. But what has been built after the Cold War, and has been built by Americans and by Europeans and the Chinese, and mainly the Chinese and the Americans, a kind of, not harmony, but the acceptance of the other, it seems to us, to me and others, well, we are starting to move in another direction. We don't know exactly toward what is the new direction. So in that moment, people, countries like Brazil need desperately people capable to have strategy, to know what will be, maybe, but anyhow, let's make some bets, the future. How the world situation will evolve. What is our possibility within this world situation evolving? So we need a new vision to produce what is, well, our hope to again, to be trustful in the possibilities of Brazil. Thank you very much.
Muito obrigado. Thank you. It's an honor to be here. And so now we will have a little bit of time for discussion and questions. I'm going to turn it over to Professor Fischlow to make some commentary first. But then we will turn it over to the audience for a few questions. And I just wanted to go over a few just quick things. So if you are interested in making a question, later you can come up to the mic and line up. And there's a mic in the aisle over there. We do ask that you be brief, and be mindful that there are maybe many people that want to have burning questions to ask the president. And if you could just be brief and make a question. And I think the way we'll do this is we'll collect 3 questions at a time and turn it over to the president and have him answer them. And I do just want to, one final note, as this is kind of our house rule here when we have these world leader events here at Columbia, is that this is really a space for the Columbia community to ask questions, especially students. So we do ask that this is not a place for questions from the press. So thank you, and with that, I turn it over to Dr. Fischlow.
Thank you very much. Mr. President, I would like to make a wager with you that it was not when you became senator, because I was not in Berkeley at the time. It was October of... It was in October of 2000, and it was...
No, 80-something, because I became senator in 84, I guess.
No, 84, I was out. You had, when you became Minister of Foreign Relations, and we had the meeting at Berkeley in the Chancellor's house. So sometimes I'm right.
Yes. Well, so there are different occasions. Okay, all right.
Let me turn to one of the questions that concerns everyone. Brazil is in trouble now because it avoided the fiscal responsibility law, because it didn't follow all the regulations. Now you have a constitutional amendment which passed, which requires that for the next 10 years, one must have a particular rate of growth, etc. Don't you think that is a little unwise, that relying always on constitutional amendments as a way of resolving problems?
Well, you refer to the law of fiscal responsibility. I was in office when this law has been approved. To my surprise, the law was approved without any reaction, or not big reactions. Why? Because probably the congressmen were not aware of the consequences. And the fact is that the important thing is not to have a bill approved, is to have enforced the bill. And the law of social responsibility was not, after some point in time, enforced. The same applies to what the last constitutional amendment, who put a top in the governmental expense during a period of time. Well, let's see if this will be enforced, and what is the cost to enforce the law. The law of responsibility, fiscal responsibility, is there. One of the bases for the impeachment was because the president decided not to follow the law of responsibility, fiscal responsibility. Well, I would say that what produced the economic chaos, financially, state finance chaos, was the fact that from one time, in one moment in time on, the decision was, well, let's give more credit, let's give incentives to consumption, don't paying attention to investment. It was a kind of discovery, which is a very old thing. It's very simple to produce a boom. It's very difficult to keep going. So what occurred was a tremendous boom, because the credit was very easy to get money, and then, well, the lack of investment, lack of jobs, and then the state finances were affected, and this stopped the whole thing. So the fact that we have lots of unemployed is because of that, because of decision. And when the government decides to incentivize consumption, to give more credit for a house, credit for I don't know what, to buy cars, people applaud. Because they don't have the sense at all. In the future, the consequence will be like that. It is difficult. What is difficult is you have to learn. But we did several times the same thing. We repeat again and again and again the same mistakes. Well, in the name of what? In the name of well-being of people. But well-being of people depends on the continuity, not just one moment. You have the continuity of a set of policies to have to be enforced. I would say several of these social policies are very positive and have been implemented. And we have to keep these policies. But we also have an eye on the bad consequence of the lack of responsibility in dealing with law. And this is not enough to have an amendment, a constitutional amendment approved. It's necessary to be tough and to not to make a misuse of your power, the power to produce credit, the power to produce money. We have to be not self-limited, but the society has to be more aware of that, to impose limits. I'm not sure if our society is yet aware of that.
I think we should now open it up for questions before the line gets any longer.
Please, simple questions, very simple, not difficult ones. I'm tired. I'm old, I'm tired. Be patient, okay?
Ex-president and professor. So my question is connected with what you were speaking, like in the beginning. That's why reminds me that book. The name is The Art of Politics. So you said that was an accident, but in the book you said that it was fortune.
Yeah,
yeah, as our friend, as our Italian friend. Yeah. So in your book, The Art of Politics, you interpret Max Weber's stance by distinguishing the two ethics, the ethics of conviction and the ethics of responsibility. I think you said, I don't know, but I think if I remember, you said that the best thing to do is to operate with both in balance. So I still have a good memory. And so if you operate with just one, you would culminate in fanatism or in cynicism. My question, for the elections of 2018 in Brazil, would be, which one is the least cynical or the least fanatical political party? That is my question. But if you want to, I don't like it, it's difficult to say because to analyze in terms of political party, like we are saying like institution, but when we think about ethics, it's more about like individuals. Yeah. But if you want, you can say about any candidate or you can say about the institution. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. What are you referring to what I wrote? I don't remember exactly, but it's true what Max Weber said. And let me give you a very simple example. Once I was in Rio, and some newspaper people asked me about the rate of interest or something like that, or the exchange rate, I don't remember. I said, no change at all. Of course, I knew that some change will occur in the other day, but I could say, because if the president says it's a disaster in financial terms, in the markets immediately. So in that position, I understand Weber's sense of responsibility. My responsibility is not to say the truth. It's, if possible, not to say anything. Because not to say something wrong. But you cannot say the truth, that is taking by true what will occur because I decide already. But I cannot affirm I decide because it will produce immediately a negative consequence. You see? So when you are in government, you cannot use the same length to judge those who are taking decisions. That is not the same as to say those who have to take, those who are entitled to take decisions are not responsible in terms of ethics. They have to believe in something. What are your beliefs? And you have to explain. Of course, never is complete like that. But every time I was president, I wrote a book about my proposals. I was not unable to fulfill all proposals, but I never, you can read it, I never was out of what I said. I tried, not necessarily I have been successful, you see? So, you refer to different parties in Brazil. I would say the parties have no more representation in Brazil. They are highly lacking credibility. I'm not referring to one party. I'm referring to the parties, and I gave you the reasons why I think that it's like that. I belong to one party. I will try to move this party ahead, but I know that the difficulties existent in different parts. In all parts it's difficult for me to imagine one party. This is a correct party. Most of them have been implied in wrong ways. So it's difficult. If you ask about leaders, some leaders, who are the leaders who are more affected by what happened? Those who have been out of power. But because of that, they are not involved. What they are saying could be okay. But anyhow, and if they became powerful people in confronting realities, how they will behave? It's not clear. I believe some people, some including candidates there, they have good faith. But they are saying things that they believe in. But I'm not sure if being in power, they'll be able to behave as they are proposing now, because there are other. Hey, this is not disqualifying them. That's why I use Weber, because I think that the man in power has responsibilities. It's not just true. We are not praying in a church. It's easier to pray in a church. No, it's easy. But anyhow, we can do it with more, be self-confident that you are behaving correctly. But when we are in power, we have to take decisions between that and that, and under circumstances. No, it's not your values or your will alone. How you translate your will and your values into practices. Practice has to be compromised with some situations. So that's the difficulty to judge others.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, please. And again, let's try to be brief, just to be mindful. There's a lot of people that want to ask questions, and we want to make sure that everybody, or at least most of you guys, can get a question in.
Good evening, Mr. President. I'm a MBA student here at Columbia Business School, and my question is, if you were in our shoes, meaning graduating next year, would you be willing to go back to Brazil upon graduation?
I certainly will. Certainly, yes. You know, well, it depends on each one. I had the possibility once in my life I was invited when I was teaching in France to form part of the Collège de France, which is the most important institution in France. The guy who invited me was Foucault. And I was in a restaurant with my wife, still alive, the first one, and Foucault. Well, I prefer not to believe what he was asking me about. Then I was trying to see what are the conditions to be appointed as a part of the fact that the congregation has to nominate you, and there is always the dispute. There was another question. I had to become Frenchman, citizen. I decided no, because I think, well, it depends on each one. My roots are so profoundly entrenched in Brazilian life, in Brazilian people, Brazilian culture. I cannot. I think I have to be there. Of course, at that point in time, it would be possible for me to live in different parts of the world. But I don't want to do. I prefer to be there. It depends on each one. I have several grandchildren. Well, most of them are studying abroad. All the time, I understand if someone decides to stay forever, okay, but I would prefer to have them in Brazil. So I continue to be very provincial in that sense. Go back to Brazil.
Thank you.
Hi, so I'm an undergraduate here at Columbia. My question is, as political scientists, we love patterns. So with the rise of the extreme right in Brazil for the next election and the power that they're getting, we can not look back into the past and to the beginning of the 20th century when they were raising to power. And one of the big things that allowed these people to get into power is that the mainstream parties failed. So my question is, both to the center-right and to the center-left, especially to the center-right in this case, what do you think needs to change and what actions need to be taken by the mainstream parties to make sure, as we assume that we don't want an extreme in power, what needs to change?
Well, you know, it's difficult to look after the political scene in Brazil using the eyes of the past. I said this at the beginning. We had in the past it was very clear who are those who are from the left, who are those who are from the right. Of course, there are differences in that sense. Of course, there are some people, it depends on which your acts, if you believe in terms of social justice. Those who are not looking after justice, social justice, belong to the right, you see. Normally there is a confusion. People don't know exactly because they behave, it depends on which issue. They change their minds and they go and back and forth. As I said to you, up to very recently, we had a kind of mix between right and left and center, and the parties which are considered leftist parties are supporting rightist interests and so on and so forth. So I would say, in my personal preference, I would say it's necessary to reorganize a center looking to the left. Yeah. That's my preference, my personal preference, not an analysis. And this implies that you have to have a progressive look, meaning you have to take into account what Xi Jinping said the other day, that is to say, globalization is not an ideology, is a phenomenon as a consequence of a change in the mode of production. So you have to be engaged in the international scene. I think you have to look that Brazil has an acceptable degree of difference in terms of income. Albert Fischler was one of the first who showed very clearly, a long time ago, how the situation was in Brazil. We made some progress, small ones. I think it's absolutely necessary to go further. It's impossible to accept the degree of economic and social differentiation as we have in our country. And I would say also that there is another question which has to be dealt by those who are not reactionaries, and that is crime. Crime. Crime is expanding enormously in Brazil, and not like corruption, not the personal crime or personal corruption, organized crime. If you go to Rio, I go often to Rio, you'll see the situation is difficult to deal with the situation of crime. And if those who have more progressive views don't refer to crime as a real question, they open a space to the right, to those who speak on the name of, the right. So I think that's necessary to have a new, can I put demagoguery? I don't know, a new message, more centric, but looking to the people.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Gabriel. I'm a freshman here at Columbia. First of all, thank you for the talk. You mentioned structural crisis that our contemporary societies are going through as a side effect of the advancement of globalization and the media. My question is, taking into consideration the ever-rising influence of fake news in our daily lives, how can we rekindle the almost dead faith of the Brazilian population in politics at a time when it is crucial that we make the right decision for a future?
I don't know if I got your question, but anyhow, fake news, as you know, are usual across the globe. Fake news. How to conciliate this fake news, because our day to day have fake news, with some sense of governance? How can you, that's the question. It's not clear. I have been last week or the week before in Buenos Aires in a meeting with a group of people named Ibero-American Forum. And this meeting is composed by some intellectuals, some business, and some owners of media, the principal ones in the area. They are, all of them, completely astonished by the fact that they don't know what to do, because fake news are around. The social media is very important, more influential maybe than the conventional media. The conventional media was marked by the fact that they have anyhow someone who is able to say this is true, that's not true, to investigate, or at least to assume the responsibility, because the name of the editor-in-chief is there, and also the newspapermen used to sign their names, and social media is not like that. What to do with that? How can we govern a country? And this is what will occur. It's not a question, not a simple question to respond, because it's not yet clear. How can we influence, taking into account that we are connected, and connected through instruments which are not responsible. The information coming from them are not necessarily serious. I'm not saying that all information gave by the news are correct, but anyhow, we have some instrument to do that. That's a big question. The only countries in which this problem doesn't exist are dictatorship, because they are prohibiting these wars. So how can we create forms of government compatible with this new moment of Brazil, of the world relationship between people? I don't know. It's not clear. Not clear. Elections are important, but you know what can be manipulated by fake news. If you press your button in my name, you'll see that I have an apartment in New York, another in Paris, with the photograph. Unfortunately, I don't have. But what can I do? Zero. I can say, of course, some people will believe because they want to believe. Others know that's not true. But it's like that nowadays. Even if I will get crazy because of that, poor of myself, because every person in public life is subject to this kind of unpredictable, not mistake, it's a lie about you. You can react, yes, but how? By using the tribunals, difficult. By putting yourself another version, maybe. It's not clear. You are debating now in America to what extent the Russian government was interferes in the elections here. Who knows? So we are living in difficult days.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tulio. I'm a postdoctoral researcher here at Columbia. Thank you for being here in your time and answering our questions. I believe in justice, but unfortunately what we see in Brazil is a crisis that goes into justice as well. And my question is about next year's elections. We have, as research institutes say, we have like at least 35% that Brazilians that believe what's going on against Lula is lawfare. How do we accommodate the situation in the next year elections? And how can we understand the situation that the Labor Party, PT, is still the better rated, after all, parties in Brazil? Thank you.
Well, that's your opinion, of course. I respect. But anyhow, I think, well, about the justice. Facts are facts. You have to see the facts. See, I went to give a testimony in favor of Lula. I did. In the case of, I don't know what, one of the cases, Moro was the judge. And I went there, and I gave the testimony. Well, so I try to be more objective that I can be. Of course, I have position too. But anyhow, I think that it depends on how the justice will continue to process. We cannot, I prefer, in the case you refer to, I prefer not to say what will occur with Lula. I don't know, I'm not judge. I'm not judge. I don't want to be judge. I am not a judge. I'm not trained to be a judge. I don't know the facts. It's necessary to see the facts and to say it's true, not true. How are the facts? What is this? Well, this is a process, is in process, you see. I don't think that the justice in Brazil is completely discredited. No, it's not like that. Maybe they make mistakes too. I don't know. It's all around the world, this is possible. But I would be more modest in waiting and to see if one person, I'm not judging, I repeat, is condemned one time, second time, third time, my God, something is wrong. Not with the justice, because the facts are facts, or if they are fake facts, you have to prove that they are fake. So that's my position. Be modest, be cautious, and wait and see what will happen. I cannot predict what will happen with one, not just Lula, there are several, including my party. I think the same applies to everyone. But I think the justice is trying to be, I know that some attorneys are exaggerating, accusing without data. But I don't see up to now the judges, not one judge, but when the justice goes through the whole system, well, I think the justice as a whole is correct. There is no more possibility from governments to press justice. This is finished. And the press is there. The press is publicizing everything. So if you don't believe in the press, you don't believe in data, well, in that case, you are crazy. You are not.
Yeah, sure. No, I'm sorry. Just the question is about how to accommodate these people, not Lula or judging. How do we accommodate?
The same. I think the same applies to everyone. And all them have to be, well, they are under justice. Let's see what will happen with them. I think the justice has to discriminate. Each case is one case. You cannot put all together. Mm-hmm. In some cases, they are responsible, politically responsible. Another thing, they are politically responsible, but it's not a crime. In other cases, there are crimes. In some cases, the crime was to use money without being clear with the electoral justice, not registering the money there. In other case, the money was in the pocket. Well, you have to do, the justice has to discriminate in all these cases. and apply law, the rule of law.
I'm not saying that Lula is innocent. Not. I'm just saying that people believe in that.
I know.
That is lawfare.
I know.
And then how do we accommodate these people? That's the question.
It's almost impossible. People will deny the fact. Others are denying other facts. Other facts. You know, I cannot enter into details, but even people in power are trying to deny too. Well, both sides, all the sectors in the political spectrum are trying to deny. It's normal. It's normal. And some people will believe that they are right. But the justice exists, and the justice has the last say. That's my position.
Okay, thank you.
Olá, senhor presidente. Meu nome é Mário, sou aluno de graduação aqui em Colômbia. So my question is, as a voter, what priorities do you think the next president should have? 2 or 3 priorities?
Well, you know, we have an agenda, a national agenda, because we have to recover growth. Without growth, it's impossible to redistribute and continue to redistribute. How to recover growth? We need investment. Well, how to have investment? We have to recover credibility, you know, some degrees of previsibility, you see? Well, we have a tremendous lack in our infrastructure. There are lots of money across the world. It's possible to use this, I don't know, but we have to try to put more money in infrastructure. And don't put aside education. This is crucial. It's not only words. This is crucial. The world of the future will heavily depend on people's capacity to deal with new technologies and to get jobs because of that. So we have to go more further in trying to have a better of education in Brazil. I think it's a common agenda. It's not mine. Everyone has this in mind. How to implement is the point. How to enforce what is good facts, good ideas. Well, are simple to have. What is difficult is to put into practice. I hope we'll be able to have people capable to put into practice.
Obrigado.
And let me say, for me, it is not something tied to one party. I'm not sectarian. Not. Neither I judge the parts as a whole as make mistake. Some mistake, some parts did, other parts did the others. The world is more complicated than what is good, what's bad.
Obrigado.
Hi, my name is Marcel Orandi. I'm from Brazil. I want to thank you for what you have been done in creating the real currency. I was young in Brazil, but I remember we were living tough times out there. And in my opinion, you prepared the country at the time for the future. It is a shame what they did after what you deliver. And also, it's a pleasure to meet you in person. My question is, we have now 2 strong names in Brazil for the election in 2018. One is Lula, other one is Bolsonaro. They're not sure they will run or not. But my question is, who can do something similar of what you did for us at that time? Do you have a name for 2018 to support?
You know, as you know, I'm not an economist. I never was. Mm-hmm. I have some acquaintance with some texts in economy, but I'm not an economist. What I did was to put together talented people. So what is important for a leader in any country is not what he personally is able to do. The question is he able to listen? Is he able to join people, to put together people? Is he enough self-convinced that he has his own value, that he can add people with more value than himself?
Yeah, for sure.
Because that is the question. That is the question. There are several people in Brazil capable to do that. I don't want to give names because I don't know yet who will be really the names. And I would say, even by law, I can't say that because it's possible to criticize me as appointing candidacies. It is not allowed. But anyhow, no, it's not because of that. It's because I don't know, really I don't know who will be able to do that. So, there are several good leaders in Brazil. Mainly those who are not yet at the national level.
Yeah.
And this is a problem. Because we have several mayors. I'm not referring to one, specifically one. Several mayors from different parties, parties, which are very good ones. We have different ministers, good ones. The question is how to transform these people into national leaders. And this depends on opportunity. I had the opportunity because of the Real Plan. Depend the opportunity. And depend the connection with the media. And the media necessarily will give more space for those who are exotic, bizarre. It's normal. It's normal. So if a person is bizarre, well, make clash, noise is okay. No? So it will be necessary to someone not bizarre, but capable to behave in such a way that they should follow him and be listened by people. And this depends on the interaction with the communication instruments, including for the social media. I am no more capable to do that because I am no more capable to be in contact with the social media on a permanent basis. You see, there are leaders. Let's see the opportunities. I think the opportunities are as important as people. We have good people.
We have less than a year for the election. It is not time to start to support someone you believe that
I think
can
that
be
I think
choice?
that is the question. I am very objective. I try to be realistic, not objective, realistic. Let's see who are they. Let's see who are the people capable to have supporting parties and in society. It's not clear yet. It's not clear yet. I don't want to give my preference here because it's not correct. This is a university, it's not a political club. In a political club, I could advance some possibilities in terms of names, but I would say there are several, and what is important is the opportunity and the capacity of the guy to take the opportunity by putting people together, and not to say, I am capable to solve all problems. It is not serious. And that's what is important, or better, what is bad in our situation. The parties normally offer these people. We have a whole of people in parties. Our parties are in a bad moment.
Yeah. Great answer. Thank you.
Just a quick note. So our time is coming to a close, but I think we have time for 2 more questions. Sorry for you guys, but we do have to wrap up around 7:30. So.
Okay. Thank you for your presentation, Mr. President. My name is Mario Saraiva. I'm doing my master's here in public administration, and I am also part of Brazil Talk. On behalf of Brazil Talk, we have 2 very simple questions, as you asked. We talked a lot about corruption in Brazil, and especially at this time, but is corruption really the biggest problem of Brazilian institutions? And as a follow-up, do you see the possibility of implementing parliamentarism in Brazil or a closed list system? Thank you.
Well, as you know, my party was in favor of parliamentarism. When I was in the National Constitutional Assembly, I was in favor of parliamentarism. What is the meaning of parliamentarism? It is a system controlled by the parties. You see, what are the advantages? Depending on the electoral system, the representation could be better off. On the other hand, we have crises in parliamentary rule which are more simple to solve. It's enough not to have majority, and the government has to be changed. In our case, we have an impeachment process, which is a terrible, bad moment. In any case, it's bad. Well, but can we really trust in our parties in our days? If the population doesn't trust in parties anymore, we have to rebuild the parties to think about parliamentarism. Of course, we have the question, is the egg or the pig? I don't know, not the pig, the galinha. Who is the first? Maybe my belief was, well, let's start by imposing the parliamentary system. But we reached such a extent of demoralization of the party system that those who speak about parliamentarism in Brazil will be destroyed by people. So I prefer abstractly. Now I think we need a leader, someone capable to reorganize the situation. Let me give you a simple and difficult example. You don't remember because you are young, but under the Fourth Republic in France, was a parallel situation to Brazilian situation. Disarray, total disarray. Several parties, nobody believed in parties, up to de Gaulle. But de Gaulle was a general, was a national hero, and France was in war with the Algeria independence. So very specific conditions. And de Gaulle imposed the Fifth Republic, which is still not there now. We don't have any de Gaulle. We are not in war. We are maybe in internal war, but not foreign war. So I think anyhow, it will be necessary for Brazil, someone capable to give the sense that we are together and we are capable to do things and let's go. Came with me, I will offer you the paradise. Even if he offers in practice hell. Anyhow, he has to offer the paradise. And what is the paradise? A more decent society with less social differentiations, with more seriousness in dealing with public money. These simple things. If there is someone capable to express in terms of emotion, not intellectually. I'm an intellectual, but then when I am no more, but when I was in politics, well, I tried to have some emotion and to transmit some emotion. Otherwise, it's impossible. The world is not moved by ideas. It's moved by ideas with emotion. So what is lacking in Brazil is a leader capable to have ideas, to understand the strategy, to where the world goes, where we go to, and also to have emotion, to transmit it that the people say, I am sincere. It's not enough to say I'm sincere. It's to be sincere. And people have a sense of that. TV is, everyone, I like to appear on TV. It's terrible, it's extremely difficult, because TV says what you aren't saying. When TV is a different thing. Your body speaks. This is important. Your body speaks, not you, not your verb, your discourses. How do you formulate? You have no control about your hand, your eyes, your face. You have no control. But people understand. When someone is capable to, sometimes it's a mystification, but sometimes no. We need someone capable to represent a new perspective with emotion.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. President. My name is Rodrigo. I am a graduate student at the journalism school. And at the beginning of the talk, you talk about the rise of right-wing politics in Brazil. And there is a right-wing thought and an agenda. And there is a component of that is the rise of evangelical fundamentalist Christians in politics. And I would like to know, what do you think about this? What are the consequences of that, especially in a context where people do not trust parties anymore?
Well, what you said is correct, but this occurs in America too. If you watch TV in America, you see it day and night. There are people praying and preaching and saying what they believe. This is democracy. You cannot prohibit that. But the point you are asking me is a good one, because take into account the disorganization of different institutions. This is one institution which is not disorganized, and some people believe. So they will have some say. They have been able to elect people in Rio, in other parts too. Well, in a democracy, what can we do? We have to respect and try to have others, if you are not member of this group of people, who try to have another group. You cannot just say, well, because you are a member of that religion, you are out of the game. You cannot say that. So I think they will have a place to pray, a place to occupy in Brazilian political life. There is another question we had not enough time to discuss about, is who pays democracy? Democracy has a cost. Who will pay democracy? We are in Brazil in a situation very difficult, because the business people are afraid now because of what occurred with the money and the scandals. On the other hand, the Supreme Court decided that it's no more allowed to have private money in politics. So the political parties are pressing in Congress to have an enormous amount of money to be capable to go ahead with the electoral campaigns. Some religions have money, and the crime has money. So probably we will see in the future more people tied to these organizations. Crime is out of law. I think you have to do whatever possible to prevent this. Religion, we cannot do anything. They have the right, they are people, they are voters. In more than that, they are saying what they are. They are not disguising what they are. So we have to have a different approach, a more open. I'm a Democrat, so I believe that they have to be together. What can we do? I don't like those who want to kill you. This I don't like. Who kill me, preferably, I don't like.
Well, thank you very much. I'm sorry we had to cut the question short, but our time is coming to a close. I'm just going to, I wanted to thank you all for the thoughtful questions, and maybe turn it over to Dr. Fischlo and President Cardoso for some final remarks, and then close the evening.
Well, I think we heard that Brazil needs leadership. And we also heard that Brazil requires a set of objectives which are constitutionally not imposed for long periods of time, but rather to use the institutions that one had more effectively. The third thing that I think we learned is that the situation facing Brazil is a very critical one, because with an investment rate of 15 to 16%, there is no possibility of long-term growth. One may get a little recovery cyclically, but it can't go on the basis of having the lowest level of investment in the region. Finally, I think we learned that President Fernando Henrique Cardoso was a great president.
Thank you very much. Let's go to have our dinner now.
Thank you all for coming, and thank you to our illustrious speakers. And I want to thank Tom Trebat and the Global Center for their co-sponsorship as well. Have a good evening.